still trying to get in, Jeff Garcia.
Wow.
Jeff Garcia was their quarterback the last time they made the playoffs in 2007.
And so Brady is the first quarterback since then that's gotten them back to the playoffs. So to me, it's not just about, who's playing at the highest level right now, winning the most games, winning their division, things like that. It's what are you doing to elevate a franchise? And that's valuable too. And his stats, Brady's stats are good enough to be able to, from the standpoint of total yards, things like that, passing yards, good enough to be considered. But that's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about how he's elevated Tampa to a place that they haven't been for about a decade and a half.
Now, when you think about it from Tampa's standpoint, this is all you need to know about what happened on Saturday if you missed it. And I don't want to go back to ancient history because in the world that we live in, Saturday is ancient history. 5 minutes ago is ancient history. But Blaine Gabbert played the entire second half. Brady was amazing. He had the best first half. I mean, we were talking over 300 yards, 4 touchdowns. He had a first half that almost no quarterback in the NFL has had in the first half in quite some time. It was a blowout. It was a 40-point win. They stand right now in the top wildcard spot, the 5th seed in the NFC. Because this story is what it is. Look, he had his worst ever performance, the worst performance of his entire legendary 20-year career in the second matchup against the Saints. Then again, he also housed Aaron Rodgers. Then again, he also didn't remember how many downs were on the line on a Thursday night game in Chicago. But push comes to shove, no matter what, the ups, the downs, the relationship with Bruce Arians, wherever it might be, the Bucs are exactly where everybody thought they would be. A chance to be an 11-win team and firmly in the playoffs. On the other side of that pendulum, Bill Belichick and company, who we'll see tonight on ESPN, taking on the Buffalo Bills, division winners for the first time in 25 years, knocking the Pats off the AFC East throne for the first time in 11. The Pats are out of the playoffs. It's a small sample size, but these guys are inextricably linked. In the first year apart, Brady is going to the playoffs, for sure. Belichick is not, for sure. First strike goes to Tom.
It goes to Tom, and you've got to think that Tom is really happy about that.
He won't say it.
He's not playing for that. He's playing for himself, but part of for himself, I believe, is to show that. I mean, why else would he leave? I mean, how many years does he have left? Does he have 6 years, 7 years? Probably a few years, handful of years. Why wouldn't he stay and just bite the bullet and stay with Belichick and live with whatever caused him to leave to begin with just for a few more years? Well, he didn't want to. And part of the reason, I think, is that he got tired of people saying that it might be Belichick and Belichick could win with any quarterback. No, I don't know that for sure. I don't want to put words in Tom Brady's mouth. But as an athlete who's incredibly competitive, who has played against former teams, played against former coaches, knowing what some of them have said about me, I wanted to beat them. And there's a satisfaction in having the people that you left behind miss you desperately. And that's the position that Brady finds himself in right now. Again, I don't know that that's his driving motivation. I would be surprised if it were. But it's got to be something that's amazingly satisfying. And right now, it is utterly indisputable that it was quarterback that had the biggest impact, at least in the small sample size that you talked about.
And you think about it, with everywhere they are on offense, they've gotten Gronkowski clicking finally. Evans has been great. Godwin had an unbelievable one-handed touchdown on Saturday. They have the number 1 rush defense in the league. Their running back situation, they have to get healthy there, but they have Tom Brady clicking, and we'll wait to see indeed what happens back in the playoffs for the first time in 13 years. Everything seems to be clicking indeed at the moment. A reminder, beginning Tuesday, January 5th, Mike Greenberg begins his show Greeny. That immediately follows our show, Keyshawn, J. Will, and Zubin, right here on ESPN Radio. Greeny will take you inside the stories of the day as only he can, have the A-list newsmakers you'd expect from Mike Greenberg, and interact with you every single weekday. From Keyshawn, J. Will, and Zubin right into Greeny, weekday mornings on ESPN Radio. That starts on January 5th. On the way, we'll ask our quarterback how a quarterback that's missing his top 4 wide receivers and 40% of his offensive line would throw the ball 53 times in a loss that could have squashed their playoff hopes. That's next on Keyshawn, J. Will, and Zoop, number 17. Aaron Rodgers, incredible yesterday. He had 4 incompletions and 4 touchdowns. 21 for 25, 4 incompletions, 4 touchdowns. You heard him sing the praises of Devontae Adams there for the season. Trev Adams, 109 catches, 1,328 yards, and 17 touchdowns. The Packers roll over the Titans on Sunday Night Football, 40-14. A Tennessee win wouldn't have gotten them the AFC South. Instead, it'll come down to Week 17 for them. The Packers, Trev, with a win, will clinch home field throughout the playoffs. They've got Chicago Sunday. Your thoughts on them? And then a very interesting question this morning on our Twitter feed.
Yeah, Green Bay is absolutely on fire right now. Defense is playing well. They've invested in defense. They've helped Aaron Rodgers that way. And Rodgers, I think, is just mad. We talked about Trubisky being mad. Rodgers is mad. He's got a commercial where a guy in the commercial tells him he's wrong about something. So he goes up and hits a golf ball about 4 miles, and he looks at the guy and with a snarky attitude says, "That come down yet?" Right? And it looked to me like he wasn't acting. Well, they drafted Jordan Love, a quarterback, in the first round to eventually take his place. And I think that lit a fire underneath him. And I think it's the same kind of motivation that he had in that commercial that he is right now playing as well, I think, as he ever has. And so I think the Bears are in for a long day.
So that'll be the matchup week 17, Chicago and Green Bay. Green Bay wins. They have themselves home field throughout the NFC playoffs. The Chiefs have already clinched that in the AFC. We're going to get to that in just a second. Bears win. They are in. And you're right. The drafting of Jordan Love didn't put a chip on Aaron Rodgers' shoulder. It put a boulder on his shoulder. And for those of you that get this one, I certainly love your shout out there on the commercial, but I should also mention we are presented by Progressive Insurance, and we also love insurance companies for those of you who get that one. All right, so we're asking this morning on the Twitter feed, who do you trust more in the playoffs, the Chiefs or the Packers? Simple, right? Chiefs have already locked up the 1 seed. The Packers, as I mentioned, can do so with the win on Sunday. Tell us who you trust more and why. Now, these results are a little bit surprising to me, but perhaps there's some recency bias there. 69%, Trev, 69% of people on our Twitter feed have said the Packers, including, I'm not here to judge, Jimmy Fingers. Jimmy Fingers says the Chiefs have overcome big deficits in the playoffs. Mahomes wildly accurate the longer the play goes on. They seem nigh impossible to be able to shut out at time. So that's interesting. 69% going with the Packers. The rationale for the Chiefs is what it is as well. If I were to give my anecdotal thoughts on exactly why some of our fellas and ladies would go with the Packers, I would say wins are wins, and the Chiefs are at a point now where now we're speculating and scrutinizing their wins, even though W's are hard to come by in this league. But here in the last month and a half, they barely edged by the Panthers by 2. They edged by the Raiders, and yes, the Raiders have played them tough this year. They barely edged by the Broncos on a Sunday night in Kansas City, didn't look tremendous. They edged by the Dolphins on the road, didn't look tremendous. And yesterday, obviously, one of the best field goal kickers in the league, the NFC's Pro Bowl kicker, missing a field goal, allowing them to sneak by the Falcons. In the interest of equal time, I would also tell you they had a very impressive win over Tom Brady and the Bucs. They had a very impressive win over Drew Brees and the Saints in Drew's first game back. A lot of talk about Aaron Rodgers and Patrick Mahomes battling 1-2 for the MVP, but you'd like to throw a 2A in there.
I think the 2A would be Tom Brady. Tom Brady right now is over 4,000.